Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Len Lonzi. I'm the managing director of the Preccelerator program here at Stubbs, Alderton, and Markleys. Our law firm is a full-service transactional corporate law firm, also with litigation services. And today we have the pleasure of working with Salona, and he goes by Salona, his last name, is the easiest way to call him. So don't be afraid of that. Salona and I met earlier this year at an event, and we immediately hit it off. And his vision, his energy, his enthusiasm, his background made it apparent that he would be a valuable asset to the Preccelerator program. And the first foray, of course, is to see how he does with a workshop. So today, we are going to enjoy his wisdom as he talks about influencer marketing. And I'm sure we all have experiences with that. I've seen other companies do it, but I would like to now introduce Salona to take it away. So it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me, first of all. And I'm kind of looking forward to the moment of, I've been looking forward to this for a couple of days, because influencer marketing is either a very positive thing or a catastrophic thing. And nobody seems to have any kind of feelings in the middle. And that's mostly because people don't understand kind of how the dynamics work, or more importantly, there's a lot of misconceptions around expectation versus kind of what a go-to-market could look like at the same time, what the different technologies and how they all fit together. So for quick context on my background, I was a street racer in New York, grew up in the 90s, built one of the first hard part review websites that kind of got discovered. I got purchased by WHI Solutions, which became eBay. Flash forward, I got recruited out to NBC Universal and Sci-Fi Channel, which was super fun. During that channel, I met the Vimeo team back in 2007, when Vimeo was a far cry from what it is now. I jumped in there as one of the very early sales hire, got to build that business through IAC, and just a really powerful place for filmmakers. And we did that really by aligning ourselves with amazing content creators who back then were not very famous film directors. Now they're incredibly famous, but we made really cool content. We were able to bring that to an audience that was looking for it. And we kind of carved out a niche apart from YouTube, right? YouTube was all things to all people. And we were kind of UGC, but curated. And that's when I started realizing that not only is the influencer space pervasive and it's all things, but it's really the future of content, right? You start thinking about, like, well, if there's 50 channels and every 50 platforms that could be, and there's 5 big ones, and then within each platform, there's a person and a sub-audience and a sub-audience to that one, how could a traditional publisher fill those channels? And they can't. And that's the kind of rise of the creator. My last company speaker was one of the pioneers of the space. And it was really interesting because at one point we owned like 40% of the influencer space from 2012 to about 2018. And it spawned all sorts of interesting companies from that. The guys from Influential worked with us, Amplify, there's like 3 or 4 other ones that kind of spun out and were acquired because it's an interesting space. But in that journey, we realized that with creators, again, there's just a lot of confusion, and it's not about the big names. It's about fundamental understandings of kind of how does influence work. See here, how the benefits of what you're creating can kind of enter into a funnel that could be discovery, it could be downloads, it could be branded sales, and it could just be awareness. But what do you do with it kind of once it's in that funnel? And usually it's paired with paid social, which we'll talk about at the end. Before I get into it, that's kind of background. Now I'm social impact, and I've been working with family offices for about 10 years now. Our focus is using causes and kind of, how do you say, creators, and then allowing brands to kind of underwrite the whole thing as to what we call social impact media. You end up with a much higher multiple on your KPI, and the KPI can range, again, the basics, downloads, engagements, awareness, or driving people down a funnel. A lot of what I have on the screen is, you guys can read through it. I don't need to tell you the facts, but what I can tell you is credibility is really the methodology that works best for why creators, why influencer marketing. I'm just going to call them creators moving forward. And that term is all encompassing of your traditional influencer, your big time celebrity, your comedic channel, your TikToker, even Discord now can be one of these channels. I'll break them down into their functional pieces in a second, but I'm just going to say creators for ease of use. There's a big discovery issue when you're trying to target Gen Z or millennials. That's my domain expertise. I've been working with them since they were a very small cadre, and now they've become, the millennials, and their purchase intent and their purchase habits are one of the principal reasons why we're not in a recession, right? That could be said if we aren't, but their purchase intent and their purchase habits are critical for the long-term growth of the country. Why I say that is that the majority of them actually discover ideas, they discover brands, they discover platforms through creators, because these creators are now they are no different than a channel on their favorite show on NBCU or Peacock, right? Their favorite show on HBO. It's just a way to tune in. And if you're under the age of 25, you don't really see a difference. Production quality obviously is much bigger and better. But when you think about it from a content and then a platform perspective, these are just broad strokes. On a YouTube 30 minutes, you're going to end up with something like, maybe if it was like 15 videos or so. On Instagram, that number crawls up, I think, to like 20, 25 videos, pictures as you scroll. On TikTok, you're up in the 50s, up to 100. It's up to 150 because it's such short format. And TikTok is now where a lot of kids are engaging with content. So you have to say to yourself, well, how do I actually engage with young people when 15 seconds is the attention span and I'm used to watching something on Netflix or a more traditional legacy medium? There's a path into influence. It's an understanding of like, why does an audience care? Why does one person have 40 million followers? Why do they have 100 million followers? Why do they have 50,000 followers? And it's a mixture of truthfulness. It's a mixture of great timing. It's a mixture of unlocking the algorithm and being consistent, right? We're living in almost a Napstery time for content where people aren't really ready to pay for it. You're seeing it with companies like Text Now, where there's 10 million multicultural Gen Zs who don't want to pay for cell phone service. They'd rather watch an ad. You've got the majority of streamers who are not paying for service, while YouTube still stands alone as the number one, because they're okay without paying for things they don't think they need to pay for. But that doesn't mean they're not willing to pay for things. They pay for all sorts of higher end and higher value items for them. They just don't like to waste money, specifically talking about Gen Z. So I'm going to pause for a sec, guys. Welcome to all the new people. We're just talking through kind of the fundamentals of influencer marketing. I'm going to walk through methodology right now and kind of why it works and what it is destined to do. And I'm on my screen thing here. There's a couple steps that are really important for all of us to kind of understand. When you think about creators and your kids are new on this channel to follow someone, like, how did they get so many subscribers? Well, there's a couple steps of how their audience gets there, right? The first is kind of the admiration. You're just like me. You've got purple hair. I've got purple hair, right? I've just gotten in recently to basically this whole new subsect of YouTube and Instagram and TikTok where these hackers basically go after those call centers that are taking advantage of elderly Americans, right? The great generation and older boomers. And it's amazing. These kids have something like, the smallest one has like 1 million subscribers on YouTube, which is hard to get. So the bigger ones are up in the 2 to 5 million. And they're in a sense back channeling, hacking into the hackers that are taking advantage of like the older Americans with like the Amazon scams. It's amazing. And you're watching like NordVPN and all these different companies integrate into this subsect of a whole different group of content creators that, one, I never knew existed, but two, have a fervent following, right? They get engagement rates of like 3 to 5%, which is very high. Average program in a 1 to 2 to 3%, you're killing as a creator. These guys in some of their posts are seeing upwards of like almost 7%, which is just, it means their audience not only is rooting for them to go do it, but they empathize, they trust, they accept, and they move to an action. That's kind of the fundamentals right here. When you think about discovery and you think about how do I even start? Well, the first part you have to think about is like, who is the audience and who are you trying to reach? Once you've kind of figured out who you're trying to reach, you can then kind of start to do, there's lots of tools that are out there. I'll talk about them at the end, kind of the broad strokes of those, and then we can get into it deeper. There's lots of tools that'll help you identify, if you have an audience you like, who is the creator who actually cares, whose audience over indexes in that cohort, right? And how are they trusting that particular person, engagement rate? how do they move down that funnel? So do they not only trust that person, but do they accept their messaging to a point where they're saying, this is awesome, I'll do what you want. You want me to go buy NordVPN? Yeah, I'll do that. You want me to go eat McDonald's, even though we shouldn't do that? Yeah, go do that. McDonald's is fine. But it's really interesting because with influencer marketing, the audience has a higher affinity than really any other medium that's out there. The problem becomes when you don't really understand how to use influencer marketing, and you start to use creators and you start to look at the big names and you say, wow, this person has so many followers. You know, my wife is a brilliant producer. She produces The Bachelor, very popular show here in the States. She's also a casting director for some of the other franchises within the Bachelor universe. And every year, these people come up and they kind of go into the show and they fall in love and they go on this epic journey and they come out as basically mid-tier influencers, right? Between 100,000 and 500,000 followers, dedicated to your middle American, right? Midwest audience that loves the show. And they're able to make meaningful incomes, right? A couple $100,000 a year based off sponsorships just by going through that funnel. And that's a very non-traditional way to go about doing that. But it is most traditional for a reality star, right? If you look about the stars in the 90s, if social platforms were around today, they'd be much better off than I'm sure they are now. This copy here is just a quick summation of what we talked about, guys. And guys, again, in the literal sense, both men and women. I always see one or two pictures here, and I see myself being very Italian with my hands, which is both distracting to myself and entertaining, I hope, for you. It's really important, guys, to understand that there are basically four types of influencer. There's hundreds and hundreds of personas, like the niche of the niche of the niche you could get into. But like to truly start to understand anything, you need a 101, right? You can get to 501s and graduate school if you want, but like my goal today is just to equip all of you on this Zoom with the basic understanding of kind of like, okay, well, how do I start to think about influencer marketing? Obviously, we know it's beneficial. Now we kind of understand some of the methodology behind it. Well, how do I start to like, suss out, if you will, the types of influencers? And the four types are really at the highest level, your celebrity. And these are not people who are necessarily born of social. They could be reality stars if they're big enough, right? They're the Hugh Jackmans of the world. They're the Kim Kardashian. And Kris has done an amazing job, the Mama Kardashian, of building her family up. And we worked very closely with Kris at Speaker back before the Kardashians were really as big as they are. And some of the kids really performed well. Some of the folks did not perform as well. And I had one client, it was a big studio with a big picture. And this was back in 2016, 2017. And they're like, yeah, we want to spend, we've got $150,000 to spend. We're so excited. Could you get us this particular influencer? And we looked at Kim, and she's great at all sorts of things. As you guys will see, I've got them broken down by their names. Then on the far right, I've got what they're best for, the type of activations that they're best for, compensation that they're usually looking for, and the challenges you'll face in working with them, right? When someone looks at a big celebrity, I mean, a big one, right? And then use Kim, she's got what, 318 million followers as of, I made this on Friday. That's insane how large that is. It's incomprehensible, almost more than the Americans that are in our country. But the problem is there's a very low participation and there's an extreme fragmentation if the audience of Kim is not necessarily aligned with what you're trying to do. So this particular studio, again, it was a normal size budget for a moderate film, and we ended up really helping him out. But we did this thing called, at the time, micro influencers or lookalike, audience matching lookalikes. And we said, look, you can pay Kim, like, I think at the time she was getting about 30 to 40 grand a post, right? We said, that's fine. If you really want that, we got her, great, locked it in, but we're going to take the rest of the budget and we're going to mix it across lookalikes. So we know her demographic could be right for this film, but she is not maybe the best mechanism, though she is really good at Kim Kardashian stuff. The Kardashians can move their products like none other. And their infrastructure of how they are organized, when they want to launch a product that aligns to their demos, they'll move product like nobody's business. But if it's even a small fraction misaligned from who that audience is, i.e. a Kardashian product, it falls on its face. And to that point, they paid her a lot of money, again, and she ended up with a fraction of the engagements. Maybe, I want to say like 150 engagements on a tens of thousands of dollars spend. the client was kind of surprised. However, we patch in all these micro influencers and these social celebrities coupled with paid social, i.e., Facebook, Instagram, etc. You take a piece of content, you add an audience analytic over it, and then you just use traditional media, paid media, to push that piece of content out into the ethos and into the demographics you've identified. We ended up crushing the campaign and getting a whole lot of repeat business, and almost became an AOR for this particular studio because they just started listening to us. And we realized that thought leadership is as much of letting clients make their mistakes as ensuring to give the bumper bowling so they'd be successful. That being said, with your kind of next tier down, it's not a tier down in terms of what their reach is. It's just a different classification of the type of individual that you're going to be using to engage with an audience, right? And my favorite really is the social celebrities. One of our good friends is a guy named Keegan Allen. His timing was spectacular. I think his Instagram is Keeg1 now. He's currently the villain on Texas Walker Ranger. Back when he lived here in LA, he was one of the heartthrobs on Pretty Little Liars. That entire cast of Pretty Little Liars really was a mixture of being born of social. Instagram just came out. They were in this really cool, fun show, and they all ended up with a few million followers who really like them. I mean, I would see some of these creators show up from that show to a Comic-Con style event or to a one-off book signing, and you'd have between 1,000 and 5,000 screaming, traditionally little girls or young women at the gate, like excited to see their book, wanted to get in line, and then a fraction of those people actually would get in, buy the books, etc. This at the end, you're kind of this tier all the way to the advocate or your micro influencer are really the sweet spot if you're looking to drive meaningful engagement, right? You want to do something big and sexy and splashy. Celebrities are always great. They're going to cost you a lot, but with paid social, you can get out there and mitigate some of that risk and offset some of those costs. With your social celebrities, they're getting a lot of interest right now. So finding the perfect one who like, oh, I love this guy or I love this woman so much, they're everything I want. First question is their audience aligned? And there's lots of tools we'll get into in a second that can help you with that. Most of the platforms have that. And also you can just ask the creator themselves if budget permits. But a sweet spot for everyone, if you've got your kind of A-round business or your Fortune 500 company that's looking to connect with nuanced audiences for some real growth, your mid-tier influencer and then your micro influencer paired together provide just extreme value because the micro influencer may only have like 50,000 or 25,000 or whatever, but they're so excited to get the piece of content, they'll give you the rights to it forever, pretty much. And what we've done with some of our partners, specifically in the impact space, is we've taken a piece of content and then blown it out with big social, paid social, and been able to just drive incredible engagement that then became the template for how a nonprofit goes out and approaches brands, or how a brand starts to think about CSR, or how an automotive client like Stellantis uses camping influencers to do X, Y, and Z for their new upcoming product or whatever it's going to be. At the end of the day, if you want a big name, you're going to pay a premium. There's going to be a low participation, but there's a big chance that that person, this is the kind of the simple breakdown. This is really the only slide you need to know of everything I've said. And this is great because we did a white paper. This is all based around a couple years ago that we've updated, but it's basically the same. It's the same information. Like influence doesn't really change. The names of the influencers change, but its practice is fundamental. And across the bottom, you'll see your celebrities, your social celebrities, your mid-tier, and your advocate, right? The way this is kind of broken down is, your celebrity has high reach, high admiration, like, oh my God, do I love that celebrity? But the trust is not really there because they're so big, they're so ridiculous, you expect them to go and do something. The acceptance is moderate, meaning you're like, wow, that's so great. Next, right? Because it's entertainment. And it's a low efficiency. So you're not going to see the manifestation of your budget, your KPIs really carrying through. And that's not all true for all celebrities. There are some DJs that are spectacular at their engagement. They've skyrocketed and they blend these lines. These lines can be blurred, but in its traditional sense, this is a very pragmatic best practice. Your social celebrity kind of sits right in that middle. Talk about again, your mid-tier as well. Same thing. Really good for allowing you to test the waters. Won't cost you too much. They'll fit in your budget. They're very open to work with you. They're still okay on the reach. They're okay on the admiration, high on the trust, high on the acceptance, high on the efficiency. You can take one of these mid-tier or advocates. They start working. You can build an army of creators, right? Your own influencer network. That was part of what my old company did. And I've actually done this for quite a few brands. And now I'll be doing this for potentially some family offices and VCs here in LA, though I'm currently in Gallup, New Mexico, where they want to kind of own the ability to, how do I bring something to market for males 18 to 13? Oh, here's a cohort. Here's a group of influencers that fit that bucket perfectly across gaming, across movies, and X. How do I go for 18 to 24? How do I do it for 18 to 34? It's really easy to start to find these individuals once you've kind of tested the waters and kind of put your foot in, learned a little bit, worked with someone like myself or whomever. I will caveat, a lot of people have taken advantage of this space. They've got one famous friend, and so now they've got an influencer network, and suddenly they're out there moving product. And if you don't know what you're looking at, you may see a lot of engagement that really doesn't matriculate down a funnel, doesn't really go anywhere. And you find yourself being like, wow, we just spent $1 million in influencer marketing. Look at all these engagements. Look at all these conversations. Hey, did anybody actually download the app? And so it happens so many times. Like, it's literally about saying, we need to be lean thinking about everything we do in this space. You say, okay, if I want to test the waters, I want to work with individuals that understand this. It will cost something, but it will save me long term. And I also want to be aware of, I need paid social, because you get a 3x multiple on average multiplier. When that piece of content's built by that creator, you get that out into paid social, and you can just let it ride and optimize. And there's lots of agencies that are excellent at paid social, right? The sweet spot is saying the right creator or the right set of creators set around a persona, an interest map that their audience, and your brand fit neatly into, like a silo. But at the end of the day, and we're coming to the end, I'm going to give you guys lots of time to ask questions. At the end of the day, there's really 3 types of influencer companies, and there's 3 types of technologies. These are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but they are sometimes one-offs. They're sometimes blended into one. My company was a blend of all of these. It's really kind of interesting as we think through, what are my needs for influencer marketing? Do I want to hire someone to come in and do it? Do I have a friend who's a celebrity? And there's lots of brands I work with where they're like, hey, I've got the celebrity. They're so great. Can you talk to them? And I meet the celebrity. I'm like, oh my God, it's so interesting. What are your interests? And they're like, I like this. And I'm like, it doesn't align with the brand. And I care about this. And then I start looking at their audience and just pulling to some very broad analytics that anyone can get. And you just see a catastrophic misalignment between who this person is, who their demos are, and what the brand goals are, right? And so there's companies that will help you with that. Right? So pros and cons of each. Managed service. When you think about managed service, you're basically paying someone like, hey, look, here's my marketing budget, or here's like an IO, or here's a RFP or whatever. I really want to reach these people. Can you put together a program for me, et cetera, et cetera. These are great if you don't want to do the heavy lifting. There's quite a few of these different companies that are out there that exist and more or less can take advantage of you if you don't know what you're doing, because they'll charge you a high premium and you'll get like 1 or 2 pieces of content with a lot of paid social. That's where the lack of transparency becomes. But truth of the matter is, most companies that have an advisor like myself or someone who knows the space well, honestly, they can cherry pick what you're looking at. And when the plan comes back, it takes us 5 minutes to look at it and go, guys, are you kidding me? They're making like 80% margin on the paid social. We should be getting way more engagements, better reach. And like, what are we backing into here? Like, what's the actual goal? Like, don't get sucked into the idea of, oh my God, this celebrity or this person is so perfect for me. Like, there's nothing worse than selling yourself into an idea. It's an analytical business. There's an art to it about understanding how that piece of content kind of works its way through social. But the science is the paid social. That's where the scale takes off, right? Marketplaces, these are great. You can talk directly to influencers. Hey, this is awesome. We'd love to hear what you're up to. This is our product. We're so going to love you. These sometimes fall on their face. They're really good if you want content. They sometimes fall on their face because the lack of transparency into what you're getting and how it's coming through and where we pull in those data points. There are some pretty good ones out there which we can talk about offline. But again, if you like doing it yourself, awesome. And last is SaaS. This one works great for like, we had to deal with Time Inc., which was pretty interesting in that we trained them up and they were able to use our dashboard to kind of run their own programs. This is where you guys, in essence, would build your own influencer network. You could say, I firmly believe that this is the kind of, we've done some A/B testing. We know it works. We're crushing it on TikTok, or we really do well on YouTube, maybe YouTube Shorts, because YouTube's paying a fortune to promote shorts right now. It's always good to be on a platform and they want to promote that service because you get all this free traffic and YouTube's paying for it. But at the same time, aside from like licensing fees, sometimes the fees can get a little convoluted based on the service you use here. But if you do plan on building it yourself, this is really probably the best way to go about it. Lots of people can manage these things for you. And then last but really not least is kind of like the technologies, right? There are all sorts of just databases you can get to, networks and automated platforms that are a little more turnkey. The databases are cool because they're obviously cheap, but the data points sometimes that are in there based on where they go, like some of these platforms will just crawl like the world, the web at large, right? And you end up with really misaligned data points that don't really come through in the way that you could because it's inexpensive. The influencer networks themselves can be actually really interesting because a couple pieces, they're opting in. So, like, hey, I'm interested to hear more about what you're doing. They understand the benefit of the branding. So there's a higher level of sophistication. But the problem becomes then it's only the people in that network we're really able to work with. And so you may find that there's this one person that's great, but they only have one of that one person. So then you're back to square one, kind of trying to figure things out. And the last piece is really kind of like an automated platform. There's lots and lots and lots of these. As a matter of fact, this is probably the most commoditized of all the different pieces that are out there. People opt in, they get lots of deal flow. I mean, I know a lot of founders of these different companies who have just completely burned out because they're like, I don't even want to talk to creators anymore. And it's just because, through the pandemic, a lot of people got paid a lot of money. Our space really took on a kind of a momentum of its own where brands started reaching out to creators directly and offering them ungodly amounts of money to post. My wife has had more deal flow than I've ever seen. Her account's been, she's basically a micro influencer, maybe just a little bit above that. But at the same time, it's been really interesting because there's now been a slight retraction where they're saying, did I really get any value out of that? For a lot of people, they absolutely did. But for a lot of companies, they fell prey to wow, that my kid just told me this creator is amazing. We need to be all over it. Oh, hey, by the way, AARP, you shouldn't be talking to someone who's the average age is a 13-year-old boy. And with that, that's my one-on-one, guys. I really like to leave it the back end open for questions because hearing myself talk about this forever is kind of annoying. But answering questions and providing value is really what the purpose was of this particular endeavor. I hope this was a good overview for you. That could become kind of like the first sedimentary step for a lot of us, or potentially a refresher for those of us who know, of setting that baseline of understanding so we can start to build up from there.
Any questions from the audience? I have a couple of while you're formulating your questions. So my experience with creators, influencers is that their attention span can be squelched by shiny objects, meaning they'll go on from one project to the next project to the next project. What is the typical longevity of working with an influencer on a campaign or with a company, and what techniques can you use to keep them engaged?
Yeah,
beyond paying them?
Great question. Yep, that's a great question. So I think there's a couple of pieces. The brand ethos. So I talked about social impact in the beginning, and guys, again, in the macro sense, men and women, it's really important to view your companies in today's marketplace. If you're going to talk to anyone who's under the age of 30, to have some kind of impact or some kind of giving back focus. For spirit brands, it could be positive drinking. For water companies, it could be like, hey, look, we're looking to be fully aluminum by X, Y, and Z. Here's our plan. For beauty brands, it could be like, look, we're not only empowering young women that they don't need makeup, but if you do want makeup, here's a sustainable solution. And for those of us who don't fit into that bucket, there are easy ways to identify something that's important to you as the founder, as the investor, as the business unit owner, that resonates with the audience. So like the first piece is trust. For a lot of creators, they're going to get paid. I have some friends who make a killing, who make an absolute killing. It's insane. And they don't care about their audience. They just want to get paid. They want to make like $1 million a year, getting free stuff and going on trips and X, Y, and Z. And sometimes they disclose, sometimes they don't. You have to have a pound AD a partnership, whatever. If you don't disclose, there's FTC and GDPR compliance issues and COPA compliance issues, because just like snake oil back in the day, which is the essence of this particular law, you always have to disclose a material relationship. And so when I put a bow on this for you in 1 second, best way to summarize this, if Tom Cruise is like jumping on a couch saying, "Go see Maverick, it's the best thing in the world," you're like, you know what? Tom Cruise starred in that film. I'm pretty sure that's what he's at. But if Tom Cruise is like, "Hey guys, let's go drink this new fluid. Like, let's go drink this new cola," you're like, bro, seriously? Like, I don't, what? Like without that disclosure, it's, if there's not that material relationship, you'll find yourself in kind of some hot water. Best way you can kind of keep someone interested is provide them with a key value that says, our business believes in this. You believe in this. We love who you are. We'd love to work with you as a partner and potentially get you products, obviously give you some money in the beginning. And most importantly, get the rights to the stuff we're going on for 6 to 12 months. At the end of the day, guys, content gets stale if you keep pumping it out to the same audience. And you have to touch a consumer like 6 times or so to get them to move towards something a little shorter than that with creators. But it's really just about providing them with that your brand cares, making sure your product makes sense to them. And then it's just about finding those creators who oftentimes have other creator friends who have very similar audiences, right? I just used The Bachelor as an example because they have very high audience indexing. So like The Bachelor and someone who's just on the show, you look at their audiences and they are 80% overlapped, and from someone new to someone very old school in the infrastructure. So you can access big talent without the big price tag if you're creative on how you think about where that audience resides. Did I answer that question for you?
Yeah, very much so. Thank you very much. All right. So the follow-up question then, and I'll let other people ask some questions here. The inventory of creators and finding and connecting with those creators varies by platform or what type of social media you're using and how you want to use them. What types of tools are out there to help identify these folks? And are those tools easily found? And are they free? Do you pay for them? Or is it all the above?
So it's all the above, honestly. It really comes down to, I'm not sure if I'm using this word the right way, but like the level of dexterity you have for working within our space. Like an example, managed service. You can go to a company and say, hey, we want to target this kind of person with this kind of content and this demographic, and here's $50,000. And they'll come back to you with, hey, here's 2 samples or 3 samples of influencers. We're going to give you simple math, 5 million impressions at $10 for $50,000, and you'll get 500,000 engagements, right? You could say, great, that's perfect, whatever. I don't know. I can just take that and I can go get it vetted by a professional, or if I trust that company, I can just go with them. I can tell you that one of the bigger players in the space is probably going to clear a couple $100 million in revenue. And they're doing that because they're just they've created the buy-in where people believe in their product, therefore they're pushing forward with it, right? And when they think about who they're going to go with, like, why not just go with the safe bet? Because I can just push my money there and my job is done, right? Most media buyers think that way. If you want to do a little bit deeper dive and kind of get into it, you in essence could go license a SaaS. These can be, usually they're not too expensive. They're moderately priced. There's so many out there, guys. Like, you really need to think on it, like what you're actually trying to do. But this one is like, it's a reoccurring cost. It's not super crazy, but at least the information in there is going to be vetted, and that they're running programs and that you'll actually have some pretty good feedback. The other piece is like more of that influencer network where there's like, NIL right now is name, image, likeness is all the rage. And it's properly done because these young athletes should have been getting comped this whole time. The problem is anytime there's that like new space, everybody rushes in and it creates this like almost hyperinflation, right? We were talking about before, that pro-cyclicality where everyone thinks it's going to be huge, throw all the money into it. And then hype begets itself. And then suddenly everyone's investing in the idea that it's going to be big and you're building all infrastructure. But if it doesn't actually become as big as it is, everything was for naught, right? And for this particular idea, the influencer network could be actually quite interesting. If you're like, hey, you're looking for sports athletes. I know there's like Athletes First. There's I've got a whole bunch. CAA has a great network. There's influencer. There's a lot that are out there. And you can in essence work with this one group. They'll provide you with X athletes that like X things. It's really a question of who we're trying to reach, what is the product type we want to have, how much knowledge or how much time do I or my team want to invest in something, and then you can kind of ask that next question, Len, of like, oh, it's managed service, or, oh, I'm going to build my own network, or I'm just going to go use an automated platform because I don't really care. Like, you know, it's funny. There's a case study, Casper mattress, right? If you've ever done business school, you know that's the one they say, look, they only spent 10,000 in PR. But what Casper doesn't talk about, and I've spoken about this length, is they gave away hundreds of mattresses. I know because they gave them to us, paid us, and then we gave those away. And those mattresses showed up in the hands and in the beds of all these creators, and they kind of didn't classify it as a media spend, because back then it was influencers, which fell somewhere in PR and somewhere in advocacy marketing. It was gray area, but there was no science there. That was a lot of product flowing into the hands of individuals, right? Everyone's getting a mattress, literally. And people started sleeping on the Casper. I'm a partner of Casper. Everyone's like, Casper mattresses, that's great. They're in a box. And there you go. That was just one of those things where they worked with companies like ours. We were managed service at the time. They said, look, you want to access young people who don't feel like going into a mattress store and see that as creepy. How do we go about doing that? And we provided them with a bunch of great creators across a beautiful cross section. No really big celebrities. A lot of the kind of own your discovery. It's a term I use very appropriately for when someone identifies your brand and sees your brand for the first time. How am I discovering it? Am I seeing it through a person where I'm like, oh, I do not want to associate with that guy? Or is it like, yeah, that person's so cool, I want to be around them, right? That makes all the difference. It's why people get judged for having a Hotmail email versus a Yahoo email versus a Gmail. That's the best way I could put it for you.
Or right? AOL.
Oh, or AOL. Could you imagine? You're like, it's an AOL. You instantly want to disconnect, not from that person, not trying to be judgy, but it's just, it's almost like you're perceived as more progressive as you continue to the journey of evolutions of technology. Just like you wouldn't have an iPhone 1 right now. That's not cool. Or a BlackBerry, even though I love typing on BlackBerries. You have an iPhone or you have an Android device. You have one of the newer ones because that's how it works. It's no different than how you're discovered in social. It's no different than how you're perceived in my stupid joke about your email.
Well, I'm not offended since I use an AOL address.
I know you do not, do you?
I do, of course. I'm old enough to have had the same AOL account for 30 years. So moving on from that, what is, you know, a lot of the people that I know that are on here are working in startups and the startups that haven't been funded in an A round yet. They may have raised a seed round. So the dollars that they're deploying for customer acquisition and for marketing are not very high. Are there some things that you can do to kind of guerrilla warfare this? And
100%.
So you're not paying tens of thousands of dollars?
Yep. Yeah. I one of my favorite things to do, guys, and I'm an operator founder myself. So I've raised money, I've failed, I've won, I've sold some stuff. I advise a bunch of cool companies, and now I'm all about equity. And that's where this is going to go. So you're not really talking about an ESOP, right? Your ESOP's great for employees. You earmark that. That's where it's going to go. For creators, they're transitioning to what can I do with this footprint? Because while, yes, they're making a lot of money, they're also all scared. All of them are scared. The money's going to stop, okay? Because it will stop. There will be a point in the next year. It could be happening now where brands are slowly pulling back because consumer spending is potentially going to change, and quantitative easing is happening, and all these people are just using terms they don't fully comprehend because economics. For creators, they're thinking of how do I create actual wealth? And this is not for all of them, but for seed, as I've specialized in kind of seed, pre-seed, and A. And A is kind of becoming like the new seed round because it's really getting harder to raise an A round. You can, if you look at your cap table, carve out a meaningful piece. It doesn't have to be crazy. A lot of creators don't actually know their values. They could say, I get 0.5% of this business. Oh my God. There was a spirit company that approached Lindsay and a bunch of the cast, and they were using 2% of their business fractionally broken out to like a 1/100% of like a spirit thing. And Lindsay's like, is this good? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's terrible. 1/100th of 1%. This exit has to be spectacular, which it will not be. They're going to exit at 30. That means you're going to get like $50. Just get paid. Selecting some influencers, putting them on a vesting schedule that makes sense for you and your cap team, And then you can try them, right? Put them on a 4-year or a 2-year over a period of time. You can go through a couple influencers, a couple creators who may fit what you want. Their audiences will line up. Our goal is to drive downloads. It's to drive views on a video. It's to raise awareness for a Kickstarter, whatever it's going to be. And you, in essence, can very inexpensively get them in the door just with equity. And if they work, keep them around and just say, hey, who else do you have in your network? Who else can you work through? If it doesn't work, you get rid of them. And based on how you vest, they may not get anything for that. The market is quite fertile in that idea, in that a lot of creators want to do it. They don't really know what best practices are. I'm actually working with 2 different groups now where we're starting to coach up creators on how to think through these things, because they've got some of these creators have amazing audiences that just, they'll drop an NFT even in today's depressed NFT and crypto or blockchain market. They'll sell out. You're talking about $500,000 in a 5-hour window. Amazing. So there's very, very exciting space. If you've got equity to play with, you should very much be thinking about that, because the right creator with the right equity package costs you not very much, and their upside could be huge, and they just become your trumpet to the world for other people who are similar, and also for you to kind of get just a free footprint so you can A/B test.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Lamont asked, could you elaborate on what you mean by unlocking the algorithm? And also elaborate on the value of using a SaaS platform in conjunction with in-house efforts.
Yeah, for sure. So I think unlocking the algorithm is not like growth hacking, because that term has become so nebulous. Like I don't even know where to start with that term. But like what I talked about with YouTube, right? So YouTube Shorts, creators have kind of discovered YouTube Shorts as it started off as a joke, like this is like a lame version of TikTok. Well, Instagram stories was a better version of Snapchat. Who the heck uses Snapchat anymore? So what happened was the platform really wants to promote the heck out of this. And actually Night Media, which is like, who the heck have over there? They have like Mr. Beast. They've got a bunch of those like call center hacker guys. They're a cool management company. But they recently just were talking about stories and how like they're seeing a multiplier of, if you're making a story as a creator and you're using the function the platform wants to promote, i.e. their short stories on YouTube, YouTube is paying to promote your piece of content to get more people to watch YouTube Shorts. So in turn, you're offsetting your personal marketing dollars if you're doing that, or you're allowing YouTube to help you grow because they're looking to launch new stuff. TikTok does this all the time, where they'll see a creator using one of their new features and really being good at it, and then they'll just blow them up. They'll use their algorithm to promote you out because you did what they want the consumer to think about best. Does that answer your question to start phase 1 of your question? And I'll get to phase 2 in a second.
So
good job.
Oh, okay, cool. And so SaaS is really interesting. So for a couple of reasons. One, building your own influencer network, there's nothing more powerful than this. I'm telling you, like, as an expert in the space, if you've got a cohort of creators who care about you, how are you managing? How are you communicating? How are you getting your compliance? How are you ensuring copy is right? You don't want to overmanage the copy. You want copy, i.e. the text that they put in their post. You want their native voice to be a conduit for you to connect with the audience, right? That's the end goal of all of this. But when you really think through how am I communicating or managing these relationships, you could have one person, an account manager or talent coordinator, whatever you want to call them, just interchangeable, managing like 5 to 10 people, and they've got an Excel sheet and they're really doing great, and you guys are moving along just fine, and you're maintaining really efficient, KPIs, and the margin is good. There's a bottleneck where the efficiency of your employee, teammate, yourself starts to diminish quite precipitously, and creators' needs and your ability to scale them increases simultaneously. You need to be able to do more, and their efficiency drops off the map. That's where SaaS comes in. So you're able to pay, you're paying a fee for this, right? And you're getting a dashboard, you're getting full suite of services, you're uploading your people maybe from that Excel, and there are different channels, their engagement rate, what types of creative work best for you. And then you're A/B testing inside the platform, because you can usually do paid social from the platform out, right? Some of them have like TikTok deals, they have Instagram deals. Facebook is for our parents, but there's still a lot of people on Facebook. Honestly, people always make fun of Facebook, and I make fun of Meta because I'm like, people really want to just be putting a dumb headset on and sitting virtually in a room when we could do it for real, or eventually have fully augmented reality around us. Like, no way, man. And there's ways to use these platforms. Facebook for your mass reach, paired with Instagram for more targeted piece of creative, with TikTok layered over with paid behind it, so that you actually really target out those Gen Zs. And then if you're making longer form content and YouTube becomes of interest to you, completely makes sense. It really comes down to the economics you're looking for. But for you to figure all that stuff out by yourself in Excel with an employee or two or even three, it's laborious. Why are we not using the AIs that are built in there, the algorithms that already exist in these SaaS tools, to start making and dictating our learnings back to us, right? Because then you're getting a 1 + 1 is 3. So that's why I'm a fan of paying a little bit, but getting a lot more. I mean, you pay like in life, right? In life, you pay 5% more for something. It ends up being sometimes 100% better. Hotels are that way. Luxury items are that way. Travel's that way. It's worth it when you're investing specifically at seed, right? Because every dollar matters. If your employee, your teammate, or yourself could be 15% better, 20% better, 100% better because they're actually learning, and you can have line of sight into the outputs, not the management, because if you're senior, you shouldn't be managing this process unless that's your job, but understanding the output comprehensively with perspective, it's a no-brainer.
Great. Thank you.
From my perspective.
Thanks, Salona. Does anybody else have any questions before we come to a close? We're coming up on an hour. I may call on one of you if you don't come up with a question soon. I know some of these folks here.
No, guys, look, if you don't, there's no reason, by the way, to feel coy or concerned to ask a silly question. There is no silly questions for influencer marketing because it's a sliding scale. Like, the more you learn, it's like knowledge. The more you realize, the less you actually know. And then it's a Pandora's box again, right? And that paradox is perfectly fine as long as you're willing to always be learning. And by the way, I make mistakes. I'm a disabled founder. So I'm a big proponent on hiring disabled Americans, working with us, understanding our needs, and then most importantly, kind of helping us be successful, because you'll never have a more loyal employee than a disabled one. And every American will be disabled at some point in their life, whether it's an athlete getting hurt, myself being born with it, or just getting old. So I say that because we have to be okay to make mistakes, guys. Influencer marketing is not about getting it right the first time. And if you did that, great. You'll get it right first time. You're a one-hit wonder, and I bet you won't do it again, at least for the first couple of times. This is about iterating, asking simple questions that can become complex solutions, but it starts with a step.
Great. One last question here.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about how nonprofits should think about influencer marketing as well? Is it different than the for-profit world?
It's different in terms of what their performance goals are, right? Your traditional 501c3, and I'm working with a bunch of them right now. One of them has a very big celebrity, and they don't know how to monetize it. So we're bringing them to like Tomorrowland. We're doing a really cool thing with a very well-known DJ, a female DJ, all about helping kids stay out of basically from foster care, staying out of being abducted and rolling into human trafficking. It's a real problem. And actually, just driving around out here, I've seen 7 billboards that say if it looks like trafficking, it probably is. Call 911, which is mind-boggling and terrifying. But for most nonprofits, and these can be very large ones, like St. Jude's, Red Cross, they have lots of creators that aren't necessarily connecting with their audience because the narrative is off. The narrative is functionally off. And I think I'm just going to get to the end of it. When you think about why does someone want to help anyone? It's not so different than a branding, but the messaging and the tweaking you need to do to it is about the storytelling. There's a real marketplace need for brands, i.e. startups, brands themselves, and nonprofits to connect with young people. And that connects through action, make it topically relevant. If I tell you we've just fed 5 million people and $10,000 a day we're giving away to help families in need, and we've saved 6 million Ukrainians from this crazy freaking Russian war that's happening, you'd say, that's amazing. Holy crap, you don't need my help. And I'm like, oh, no. Whoa, wait. This is traditional fundraising. We do need your help. There's millions of more people. There's 100,000 homeless people in my house, my home of LA, that we need to get to. I need your help. And these numbers are astronomical. what influencers can really do. And you don't want the biggest ridiculous names doing this. You want those grassroots connected advocates, those mid-tier, those micro influencers. They go and they do the work for you, right? Social impact media is all about showing the work through the voice of a creator out to an audience that is ready to discover it, and then let the payoff of social impact become the feedback loop, right? So the fear of missing out is not, oh my God, I'm missing a cool party. It's like, wow, that creator just went out and did a St. Jude's run that I could have done, and they just got 30 to 40% better engagement. When a creator and a brand come together, right? We call them cluster cause kits. Cluster being one of my startups. We have this package where we bring a cause, we bring the content and the creator, and we kind of package it in a way where you have a brand, a publisher, and an output. We see like 40% better engagement rates. So for a nonprofit, you need to be thinking about how are you not telling the narrative of look at what we've done, but look at what we're doing. And let the voice of what you're doing be mechanized and weaponized for good through the voice of the creators you have involved. And then, of course, you're not really going to pay them the same way, but you can earn big time money if you've got like Nike as a sponsor, as one of my nonprofits does, and they're giving $50,000 a year for some CSR budget. I'd help them package a program for an upcoming event. It's a little tight on the timing, so it may not work. But I was like, let's just ask for $1 million from that. If Nike says, hold on, cool creators are going to have my product. I'm going to be associated with a really cool thing. We're fighting cancer, X, Y, and Z. And I'm getting media, and it's better engagement than I would normally get. Why wouldn't I just work with that nonprofit and make a donation on the back end of it? I'll share an article we did of late where we brought Smile Train, Miss Universe, and a fintech client as one package. And not only did the client kill it, but we ended up running a great program, 3 pieces of content, over 4 million engagements, almost a 4.3% engagement rate. And then by the end of the package, the end of the program, the client made a donation, $20,000 to Smile Train. And last quarter, Q2, 85 kids got cleft lip surgery because our client kicked ass. Like, guys, this is an economy of not consumption. It's a creation economy. We can create more. We should be thinking about how do we as companies become more sustainable? How do we start to empower audiences to discover us and not just care about us, but buy what we're selling? And that's all about your storytelling. And that's why creators work.
Great. And then one last question, I promise.
Yeah, sure.
Last question. So,
I want to help.
And this is coming from one of our newest portfolio companies here at the Preccelerator. And Ellie's asking, do you know of any cybersecurity influencers? And I want to expand the question because it's not just cybersecurity. In technology startups, where the technology is not necessarily, quote, sexy for the retail market, are influencers effective in bringing that to marketplace?
They can be if you're using them to build a foundational understanding of what your company does. So are there cybersecurity influencers? Of course there are. Does the cybersecurity audience actually have the probably B2B guys you're thinking of? Depends. Is your product B2C, B2B? Is it a multiple market? Like what? I don't know the topography of that. I don't know the lay of the land. But I can tell you the audience you're looking for is out there. The audience you're trying to reach, right? Like on LinkedIn, I get approached to write articles for businesses because I've got a big following. And I'm like, I'm not writing an article about SaaS, even if it's $500, that's not worth my time. And my audience doesn't expect me to do that. I do really fun, interesting things that are trying to better the world because I'm a compassionate capitalist. I like investing in stuff that's changing the world. I like being around interesting people, and I like admitting I'm wrong and learning. So for me, that wouldn't work. But for who you're trying to reach, based on what your demos are, you can find that audience. It's a cohort. Like, hey, this is who we're trying to reach. How do we get to them? And we'll be able to extract who those people could be. You may find an example, one of those influencers that like hacks into their actual hackers. They call back the scammers and they hack into their desktops and download all their files, delete them, and then call the people that were hurt and try to get them their money back. Like that could be a great one if your demo is that demo. It's no different than any other kind of marketing. It's just instead of it being a platform buy, it's a individual who's built up a functional following, a group of people, a constituency who actually care about him or her. And then you're putting the platform buy on top of that to then really hyper target out the demographics you're trying to reach.
Great.
I hope I answered your question.
I think it answered it from the standpoint of how I asked it. If you know anybody in the cybersecurity space that could be an influencer, we can talk about that offline. You don't have
Yeah,
to
let's take it
talk about
offline.
right
I
now.
could probably find some. Yeah.
Cool. All right. With that, everybody, I want to thank you for your attention today. Salona, safe travels as you plod on to Houston. And I
Yep.
look forward to your return to the Los Angeles area. And everybody else, thank you for being on here. Thank you for your comments. And stay tuned for our next program.